long before roads carved paths through the mountains of central Kenya, there stood a solitary hill known as Kirima Gûcu, the Silent Hill. It was a place wrapped in an unnatural quiet. No goats ever dared to graze on its slopes. No children played in its shadow. Even birds seemed to avoid its twisted skeletal trees. The Kikuyu elders spoke of it in hushed tones, warning that the hill was cursed, home to a malevolent spirit that fed on human fear. For generations, people stayed away, respecting the boundary between the living and whatever lay dormant on that hill. But one man's grief was so profound, so all-consuming that it pushed him beyond the limits of fear. His name was Wawerû, a young farmer whose world had crumbled when his wife was stolen from him by a sudden cruel illness. His heart was a hollow vessel, and sleep offered no escape from the torment. Night after night, he would wander the empty paths around his village, his soul searching for answers that the living could not provide. One evening, as a sliver of moon hid behind a thick blanket of clouds, a figure emerged from the deep shadows outside his hut. It was an old woman, her body draped in a torn shuka, her face a mask of ancient wrinkles. But it was her eyes that held him captive. They were like polished stones, reflecting no light, no life. Her voice was a dry whisper, like leaves skittering across the ground. "You seek answers the living cannot offer," she rasped. "Go to Kirima Gûcu and your wife will speak to you." Wawerû's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Could it be true? Could he hear her voice one last time? "You can bring her voice back to me," he asked, his own voice cracking with desperation. She gave a slow, deliberate nod. "But there is a condition," she warned, her gaze piercing him. "Once you climb the hill, you must not respond to any voice except hers, no matter who calls your name, no matter how familiar it sounds." Before Wawerû could ask another question, she dissolved into the darkness, as if the night itself had swallowed her whole. He was left standing alone, the old woman's words echoing in his mind. Grief, a force more powerful than any fear, pulled him toward the cursed hill. As he walked, the air grew unnaturally cold, clinging to his skin like a damp shroud. The trees along the path seemed to lean inward, their branches like crooked fingers pointing him forward, watching his every move. The usual night sounds of crickets and rustling leaves fell silent, replaced by an oppressive, suffocating stillness. When he finally reached the base of Kirima Gûcu, the wind died completely. The world held its breath. With his heart pounding a frantic rhythm, he began to climb. The ascent was steep and treacherous, but his grief fueled him, pushing him upward through the grasping thorns and over loose, sharp rocks. At the summit, he found a circle of ancient stones. They were massive, cracked with age, and blackened as if they had been struck by lightning countless times. An aura of immense power and sorrow radiated from them. Taking a deep breath, Wawerû stepped into the center of the circle. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the ground beneath him trembled violently. He stumbled, catching his balance just as he heard it. A soft voice, a beautiful heartbreaking melody he had longed to hear for months. "Wow, my husband." Tears instantly welled in his eyes, blurring the dark shapes of the stones around him. "Wawerû, is it really you?" he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. Her voice seemed to float around him, like smoke on a windless night. "Yes, I am here." He closed his eyes, a wave of relief and sorrow washing over him. For a single perfect moment she was with him again. But then, another voice shattered the peace. It echoed from behind him low, heavy, and cold as the grave. "Wawerû, come here." His entire body went rigid. He knew that voice. It belonged to his late father, a stern man who had passed away many years before. The old woman's warning screamed in his head. Respond to no voice but hers. His father's voice grew louder, laced with an impatient, demanding edge. "Why do you ignore me, son? Have you forgotten your own blood?" Wawerû bit his lip so hard he tasted blood, his fists clenched at his sides, refusing to answer, refusing to turn. Then, a third voice joined the chorus of the dead. This one sounded like his mother, but it was wrong. It was twisted, distorted, like a cruel and clumsy imitation. "Wawerû, my boy. Look at me," it cooed, the sound grating against his ears. He squeezed his eyes shut tighter, a knot of confusion and terror tightening in his gut. He couldn't tell what was real anymore. The air grew heavier, pressing down on him, making it hard to breathe. Just as he felt he might break, Wawerû's voice returned. But this time it was different. It was strained, thin, and filled with a desperate fear. "Wawerû, please, leave this place. You should not have come." He froze, his blood running cold. Her voice trembled again, rising in panic. "Wawerû, it is coming." He felt it before he saw anything, a horrible presence creeping up behind him. A wave of icy cold washed over his back, and he felt a breath as cold as death itself brush against the bare skin of his neck. The wind, which had been still just moments before, suddenly picked up, swirling violently within the stone circle, kicking up dust and dead leaves. And then a new voice spoke, a deep, monstrous growl that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. "Human, answer me." Wawerû began to shake uncontrollably. He wanted to run, to scream, but his feet were rooted to the spot. His wife's voice shrieked, a piercing cry of pure terror. "Do not speak." The creature, the unseen horror, began to circle him, He couldn't see it, but he felt its immense shadow fall over him, coiling around him like a great serpent. His teeth chattered, a frantic clicking in the howling wind. His body trembled as if it would tear itself apart. Then came the voice again, darker, more intimate, and more terrifying than anything he had ever heard. "I know your name, Wa." The voice was inside his head now. "I know your grief." A long, terrible silence stretched, filled only by the wind and the pounding of his own heart. "Speak once, and you are mine." The pressure was unbearable. The world seemed to shrink down to this single, terrible choice. And then through the chaos he heard a final whisper. It was soft, desperate, and unmistakably Wawerû's. "Wa, run." That one word broke the spell. He bolted. He scrambled down the treacherous hillside, not caring about the branches that tore at his skin or the gnarled roots that grabbed at his ankles. The monstrous voice roared behind him, a sound of pure rage and hunger that shook the very ground he ran on. He didn't look back. He didn't stop. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out, finally collapsing in the dirt at the very edge of his village as the first light of dawn painted the sky. When the villagers found him, they barely recognized the man who had left the night before. Wa's hair, once black as a raven's wing, had turned completely white, and he never spoke again. For the rest of his long life, not a single word passed his lips. Later that day, as dusk settled, a few people swore they saw the old woman again. She was standing at the edge of Kirima Gûcu, a solitary figure staring up at the silent hill. They saw her lips move, and though they couldn't hear the words, they felt a chill as she whispered into the wind. Another who almost answered, and then, just as before, she vanished into the growing darkness. To this day, the elders in that part of Kenya still pass down the story, their voices low as they give the warning. If a voice calls your name on Kirima Gûcu, do not respond, for not every voice that speaks belongs to the living.